Hello, my name is Tiffany. Welcome back to my channel. Today, as you could tell from the title, we're going to be talking about phone interview tips. So, let's go. So, even before the phone interview starts, what you need to do is make sure that you have properly researched the company before you start any interview. So that means going onto their website, finding out like their values, their mission statement, anything that you could find that you think that would be helpful during your interview. And a lot of those things are going to surround like the values and things like that. So the next thing that you need to do is look back at the job description and kind of pick out a few things that relate to the job description that you can relate to personally. So in our case, it's normally like a language, a programming language. So you want to pick something technical as well as something that's non-technical. So if they say able to learn quickly or adaptable to change, and that is something that you do well, then you want to pick those things out and have examples of those things that you could tell about during your interview process. Before the interview, also make sure that you are scoping out a quiet place that you could have your interview out at. If it's in your house and you may have other family members at home, just make sure that you tell them that you're about to have an interview or something like that, and maybe keep it down for like an hour or so while your interview is going on. Or if you don't have that advantage and you do have a car, you can go out to your car and have the phone interview there as well. But be careful if you're using like the air or the heater or something like that, not to turn that up too high or too high so that it doesn't block out your voice as you're trying to speak to the interviewer. So those things, make sure you have squared away before. Also, with that being said, make sure you are going on to things like Glassdoor and finding possible interview questions that have been had before, so that you can also make sure that you know the answers to those specific questions. If you see that there's a lot of reviews on behavioral interview questions and technical questions combined together, then you want to make sure that you have done your research and you're very comfortable answering behavioral questions as well as technical questions, or whichever way is that you see most on the reviews that are there. During your interview, make sure that you set some time before to make sure that you're able to open up all the documents that you need during your interview. So if you're in your car and you don't have your laptop, something like that, maybe make sure that you've printed out like the job description and at least your resume, so that you're able to go through it with the interviewer if that happens to pop up, which more than most likely they're going through your resume with you. So make sure you have that information readily available to yourself. You'll also want to make sure like any notes that you've taken, like I mentioned from Glassdoor, any resources like that you have those notes in front of you. So if you kind of stumble during the interview, that you're able to refer back to those things and have them available quickly to you, so you're not having to open up documents and things like that. Also, you want to make sure that you're actively listening and you're actively taking notes while the interviewer is speaking as well. A lot of times, those details that you can't get in the job description, that you can't get from online, that you can't get from LinkedIn by looking up the company, you'll want to make sure that you're listening to the interviewer, because they'll more than most likely give you those key elements that you cannot find anywhere else. So you really don't know how far the interview process is going to go for yourself, but you want to make sure that you're armed with the most information as possible, so that you're more prepared for interviews in the future. So I would also have like a screen up where you could take notes. You could do a Word document, you can do a Google document, you can do like notes on Mac and stuff like that. So just make sure you're actively taking notes somewhere during the interview, so that you could refer back to those notes later after the interview is over. Definitely make sure that you're asking questions. So at the end of the interview, they say, hey, do you have any questions for us? Don't say no. Make sure that you have questions that you are able to ask the interviewer. So a big one is kind of like, how did this position become available? And what is the team of people I'm going to be working with? How many people are on the team? Who else am I supposed to be working with within the company for this position? Things like that. So it shows that you're actively interested in the job, as well as you're very serious about your approach to getting this job ultimately in the end. So you want to make sure that you have questions available before your interview that you can ask during your interview. And once you've asked those questions, make sure that you actually write down the answers. A lot of people, they'll ask the questions, but they don't write down the answers. So make sure that you wrote down your answers to those questions so that, like I said, you could refer back to them later. So after the interview is over, make sure to thank the person for their time, and then get ready to write your thank you email. If you haven't got their email address, ask them for it before the interview is over. More than most likely, though, if you schedule this interview, you have their email address. So I would use that same email address to contact them again about the interview. Wouldn't wait more than 48 hours before sending that email out. So immediately after the interview is over, I normally just send the thank you message, especially if you have an interview on a Friday. You don't want to wait too much time. So if there were flubs during the interview, maybe you felt like you didn't do strong in a specific part, use that thank you letter, that thank you email to kind of fix those things or kind of correct some things that you may have done wrong. Also, just make sure that you are reiterating your interest into the company so that they know that you're still interested. A lot of times with a phone interview, of course, you can't see the other person. You don't know their reaction. You could tell by their tone, but you don't know their reaction. So you want to make sure that you are reiterating your interest. So one way to do that is just explain your enthusiasm about like the details that were expressed during the interview, and also make sure that you are constantly putting yourself into that role. So saying, like, I'm capable of doing this, I have done this in the past, and I forgot to mention that during the interview, or whatever it may be. Just make sure that you are putting your best foot forward and making sure and letting them know that you are the person for that specific job. So that's all I have so far. If you have any tips yourself, be sure to write them in the comments below so that we could all take advantage of those tips. I thank you all for watching. Look forward to the next one, and I'll see you in the next one.